Argentina negara makmur, yang akhirnya bangkrut dan jatuh miskin, karena pemerintahannya korup dan suka berhutang.
For politicians, money is power. They always crave more. But because they don't actually produce anything, they've got limited ways to get it. They can hike taxes on the population and collect the cash at gunpoint. That's the most straightforward way. But it's also highly unpopular. Voters don't like paying higher taxes. They resent it. So over time, most politicians in most places decide it's a lot easier to devalue the currency. You keep the tax rate pretty much the same, you just print more money. At first, most people don't even notice that it's happening. The money seems free. This is how the US government just paid for the checks and the war in Ukraine and pretty much everything else that Washington has done for the past couple of decades. Just churn out more dollars. You can see why it's a popular strategy. But what happens if you keep doing it year after year? We really ought to know. 100 years ago, Argentina was one of the richest places in the world. It had everything. Abundant natural resources, vast open spaces, a well-educated, capable European population. Its capital, Buenos Aires, once looked like Paris, but probably richer. You can still see remnants of that time as you walk around the city today, but the buildings are ratty now and marred by graffiti. Argentina is no longer a rich country. It's one of the poorest nations in the Western Hemisphere. Nearly half the population here lives below the poverty line. Chicken for dinner is a luxury. The people are still impressive. The natural resources still exist. But Argentina's leaders have destroyed the country by devaluing its national currency. Argentina now has Weimar-like hyperinflation. It takes a brick of bills to buy lunch. Roads and bridges fall apart and nobody can afford to fix them. Things unravel. Over the course of the average month, the Argentine peso loses 10% of its value. In other words, everybody gets 10% poorer every month of the year. It doesn't take long for people to go hungry. Argentina's currency is so inflated and worthless, it can no longer be used to buy anything of value. Cars, houses, even bicycles are priced in US dollars. The problem is the government lies about this. Banks are not allowed to exchange dollars at market rates, and that drives the entire population underground to the black market. That's what a collapsing society looks like. Everybody's moving backwards. Nobody can tell the truth about anything. The functions of ordinary life have to be conducted furtively, in caves. In Argentina, the incentives are now so perversely inverted that many people decide it's not worth working. They can make more money sitting home idle. For young people in a country like this, the obvious solution is to leave, and millions have. The future of the country slipping away forever. What's remarkable is that's just fine with the current Argentine government and with the Western media and NGOs that prop it up and relentlessly defend it. They're happy with the corrupt status quo. They're thriving. So they attack anyone who challenges the way things are currently done. Not surprisingly, they especially hate Javier Milei. Plus, monetary policy hasn't made people happy and secure. It's wrecked pretty much everything. It's destroyed the economy and families and the national spirit. It's enriched just a few. That's hardly a radical interpretation of events. It's obviously true, and everybody knows that it's true.
You can have a system that nobody actually supports except the people directly benefiting from it. This is the main thing I've learned in the past 5 years, that I'm 54, I've lived in this country my whole life, and because I, unlike everyone else in Washington, actually kind of believed in the basic premise of democracy, which is the majority rules. That's the most basic fact of democracy. The people run their own government. If you get a majority of people to vote for something, that's now the law. And that's totally untrue. You can put it in a ballot referendum, some judge will overturn it. Well, what about democracy? You could spend billions of dollars on a foreign policy theory that nobody actually supports. Doesn't matter. In the end, most governments are run by a small group of people for their own benefit without reference to what the majority wants. And I hate to believe that that's true in this country, but all the evidence suggests that it is. In fact, it's provable. You know how you prove it? Public opinion polling. Take a look at the latest Gallup poll. Pick a poll. What are the top 10 issues for people in the United States? And then compare those to the priorities of your leaders. So people are leaving Michigan because it's very hard to make a living here, and you're constantly hassled by a government that never stops growing and that is leeching off an economy that hasn't grown in decades, okay? That's the truth. Take a look at the priorities of the low IQ lunatic who's running your state, Gretchen Whitmer, who deserves zero respect, no respect. Her priorities are what? Putting putting you in jail if you, quote, misgender somebody? What percentage of the population of the state of Michigan, even southeastern Michigan, is on board with that as a top concern? It's like roughly around 1/10%, okay, in that range. The things that people care about, Gretchen Whitmer couldn't care less about. Because democracy isn't functioning. If democracy was functioning in America, in Michigan, in California, the District of Columbia where I live, the state of Maine, the state of Texas, how many Texans do you think are all on board with letting 7 million people cross into their state illegally? What percentage? Zero. I don't care what your race or national origin, nobody is for that. That's insane. Has the governor of Texas done anything meaningful to stop that? No. The Republican governor? He's got a National Guard. He's the commander-in-chief of the National Guard, and it's Texas, so they're all large. And they have double-stack magazines in their sidearms. You think they couldn't stop that in a week if they? Of course. Just assemble along the border. We're not doing this. No, he refuses to do that. He won't do it. And it's not like no one suggested. I've suggested it to him 3 times, including in private at a cocktail party in Dallas last year. What are you doing, man? Don't you have a National Guard? Why don't you seal the border? Oh, it's very complicated. No, it's not. No, it's not. If someone's trying to break into my house, it's not complicated to repel the person. Do you have a firearm or don't you? Are you willing to defend your house and your children, or aren't you? Well, it's more complicated. Really, tell me how. Speak slowly so I can understand. It's not more complicated than that. It's more dishonest than that. You're lying to me. You don't want to do it because your donors don't want you to do it. It's that simple. Greg Abbott. Liar, and worse than liar, betrayer of your own people. That's what that is. I was polite at the cocktail party, so I didn't say any of that, but I fumed internally like an Episcopalian. I thought those things. But the point is, if you assume that just because everybody wants something, you're going to get it, think again, pal. It's very likely that, in fact, you won't get anything that you want. You will just pay for what a small group of other people want. That's the way it works. Boo is right. Boo is right. It's not just frustrating, it's a betrayal of the core promise of the country, which is the people rule. That's a criminal act. That is a criminal act. Like, just to put this in context, it's not just like you have boutique, weird, right-wing views and that's how they want you to feel. Like, oh, you're an extremist. Really? I'm an extremist? I'm going to let 7 million people into our country illegally, whose names we don't know?
You're saying they stole it from you last time. Why wouldn't they do the same this time?
Oh, well, they'll try. They're going to be trying. Mitch McConnell is trying to get senators to impeach me. Crooked Joe Biden is so bad. He's the worst president in the history of our country. I don't think he's going to make it to the gate, but, you never know.
It started with protests against you, then it moved to impeachment twice,
right?
And now indictment. Are you worried that they're going to try and kill you? Why wouldn't they try and kill you, honestly?
They're savage animals. They are people that are sick.
So do you think it's possible that there's open conflict?
I can say this. There's a level of passion that I've never seen. There's a level of hatred that I've never seen, and that's probably a bad combination.